Alors, bonjour ou presque bonsoir à tous. Merci d'être ici aujourd'hui pour la rencontre de conseil de la faculté Assemblée générale pour le mois de mai et c'est la dernière rencontre de l'année ou de l'année académique. Donc, on peut avancer, mais avant de commencer, I'd like to introduce a couple of new members. I want to thank them for participating. So first of all, we have Vanessa Daquila, who is president of the Nursing Graduate Student Association and is our graduate nursing representative. We also have a representative on the Faculty Council Steering Committee, Caitlin Fireheller, graduate student representative. So thank you to both Vanessa and Caitlin for helping out with that. Next slide, please. Before getting into the meeting, je tiens à remercier tout le monde. Vraiment, merci à tous et à toutes. Thank you, everyone. It's really been a rough ride for the last, don't know how many months now. And while we're starting to see some signs of things improving, I know that everyone has been putting up with extraordinary difficulties, either at work or personally. And people are making an exceptional effort to keep things going in the face of a very, very difficult situation. And so I think it behooves me to say thank you on behalf of myself, of course, but also on behalf of the entire faculty for your hard work, for your persistence, for your dedication. And I wish everyone well and stay healthy as we come towards the end of this pandemic. Next slide. Alors là, voici l'ordre du jour. On va commencer par l'adoption de l'ordre du jour. Alors, aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas trop occupé, mais il y a 3 présentations très importantes sur les études supérieures, sur les admissions en médecine et sur l'école de santé de population et de santé mondiale. Il y a aussi toutes sortes de décisions d'affaires qu'on va faire. Mais avant de commencer, j'ai besoin de confirmer l'ordre du jour. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui veut ajouter quelque chose à l'ordre du jour? Does anybody want to add anything to the agenda? If you want to, just for future reference, you can just show your hand in the participants list by raising your hand. I'm not hearing any. I'm going to take the agenda as accepted, and we're going to go to the next part. Suivant. So it is our tradition to take a moment to reflect on people who have passed on, who've died. And so I'm going to read out the names and then we'll have a moment of silence. So since the last faculty council, Harry Goldsmith, Professor Emeritus in the Department of Medicine, Natalia Nuno, Adjunct Professor in the Department of Surgery, Krešimir Krnjevic, Professor Emeritus in the Department of Physiology, James McNutt, Associate Professor, School of Communication Sciences and Disorders, Catherine Wong, Faculty Lecturer in the Department of Family Medicine, and Peter McLean in the Associate Professor in the Department of Surgery have all passed away. And I'd ask for a moment to reflect on them and their contributions. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in my remarks, I want to emphasize essentially what's going to come up in the fall. So we're now in May. The Quebec government at 5 o'clock in 25 minutes will be announcing its plan for reopening the province, we believe. We don't know exactly what that plan will hold, and obviously it will have an impact on our planning at some point. We do know that the province, in this province, 75% of adults have either been vaccinated once or have an appointment to be vaccinated once. And so that should be kept in mind when we talk about the fall planning. So next slide. The university, and this is Fabrice Lebeau, who's spoken to us on many occasions, has asked that all of the faculties present a set of information to the faculty, and you can find his presentations online, but I want to go through some highlights. First of all, the principles that have been used for fall 2021 planning. So first and foremost, health and safety of the members of our community and the general public. So whatever decisions are made, they're based on our best understanding of public health directives. We obviously want to ensure continuity of the core academic mission, including, and I would say especially, regarding the student learning experience and maintaining our research mission. To this end, the university, this is the Central University Administration has come up with 5 scenarios to try and guide their planning. Next slide. I think we need to go one more. There we go. This is a simplified view of a slide that Fabrice has shown around, and you can see this was originally drawn on the 20th of April. And there are a number of factors that go into determining what is being planned. Obviously, government directives, the trends in cases, and when this slide was first done, they were going up, but now they're going down, thank goodness. Vaccine rollout, which is going up very, very effectively here in Quebec. Expert advice, and you need to know that the decisions that are made are based on a number of experts, some of whom are on this call today, that consult with the university people making the decisions. And of course, part of our consideration is our travel restrictions, which are currently determined by the federal government primarily, and not really, I know many people have applied for exemptions from these restrictions, and unfortunately, we're bound by the university. Could you go back a slide, please? Yeah, there you go. So based on these kind of considerations, the university has come up with 5 different possible outcomes. On the left-hand side is the red alert equivalent. In other words, going back to where we were in maybe March or April of this year, which we think is unlikely. Pessimistic, which is slightly less restrictive, is next to it. On the extreme right, you have optimistic back to normal. That would be going back to the way things were in February of 2019. We don't think that's realistic, certainly for the fall. We don't know when it will be realistic. So there's a realistic and a realistic plus proposal. And that is what we're going to talk about. The university is formally planning for realistic. Our own feeling is that realistic plus is more likely. That is to say, we're optimistic, or at least hopeful, that with widespread vaccination as is going on right now, we'll find ourselves in relatively good shape come September. But nevertheless, we're assuming that there'll still be work to do. Next slide, please. So this is a simplified version of a slide that Fabrice has shown around. I've asked to try and make it simpler so we can go through it efficiently. So there's a number of factors, if you look down the column next to the icons, each of which has to be considered for what our scenario is going to look like. So with regard to physical security, this idea would be that the designated entrances would be unlocked. There would still be COVID patrols and mask dispensers and safety ambassadors, but there would be a little bit of loosening in terms of access to buildings. In terms of delivery of academic programs, most lectures where there are fewer than 150 students would be in person, assuming we have the capacity to do that. And that's a big assumption for some parts of our faculty. All labs will be scheduled, and midterm and final exams will either be remote or in person, depending on the preference of the instructor and also our capacity to do it. I don't think there's any plans to go back to large scale exams in the gym kind of thing, at least not at this point. A key point is about who's coming back and how many people are coming back. So the idea is to have a progressive and tiered return. That means having people come back based on a set of priorities. And actually today, Fabrice told a number of leaders in the university that they're working on developing the specifics of that priority list. I don't have it yet. But the idea is that there would be about a 30% occupancy of the campus in September. Now, obviously, those of you who are based in hospitals, you're going to be going about your business as usual, based and following the directives that are happening in the healthcare institutions. But for those on campus, we're looking at about a 30% occupancy. And what I said today when at that meeting with Fabrice is that in his faculty, we are focusing on first and foremost, making sure there's enough space for teaching and research. Administrative personnel will be brought back. Certainly people who have to be on campus to help with teaching and research will be here. But the priority will go when we have to decide who has to be on campus, will go to making sure that we have continuity in our academic programs. So moving on to study hubs, as you know, there is a program of study hubs located in the Redpath Library, the Law Library, McLennan, and on the Mac campus. And you know, within the faculties, including ours, there will also be some flexible spaces where students can go. I think there's still work to be done, in my view, making sure that we have the right spaces for students to be able to get together when they need to, and also to relax. There will be student services, both in person and remote. For services that require, let's say, seeing a counselor or something like that, there's going to be an emphasis on pre-scheduled appointments rather than walk-ins. At the same time, athletics activities will be limited until such time as we have the green light to have them open up fully. It doesn't affect most of our students and residents, but residences will be open, and non-residence food services will mostly be open, which is very important for those who are spending all day on campus. Now, another issue is extracurricular events. We've had some requests for extracurricular events. They will be allowed in line with public health directives, but really on an exceptional basis. And my advice to any group, department, unit, whatever entity that's planning a celebration or other kind of extracurricular activity is to favor online for the fall. I think after we have a better lay of the land, a better understanding of the situation, we might be able to relax that and go back to having in-person activities, but we're not there yet. Next slide, please. So in our faculty, the academic planning is well underway, and in many cases, it's a hybrid approach where some activities on campus and some online. Research is going ahead as it is now and will continue. It's been going very, very well. Administration and operations, the goal is to respond to the need with flexibility, need in flexibility and need with flexibility in the way that I said. The priority is not to bring all admin and operations people back on campus, but really to look carefully at who needs to be here and keeping within the 30%. I commented already about extracurricular activities. In terms of communication, there'll be special town halls in June and updates in the faculty health e-news every 2 weeks. So we're going to be keeping you up to date. If we're able to have a more rapid opening up of the campus, we'll let you know. If the opposite, we'll let you know also. As noted here, university planning is expected to be completed at the end of May. And implementation, obviously, if we're going to have people coming back on campus, students coming back on campus in September, there will be some people who will have to come back on campus in, maybe late July or early August to start prepping to make sure everything is organized for those learners. Next slide. So that's all I have to say on that. I don't actually, before I go read this slide, I don't know if anyone has any questions, please post them in the chat. But while we're waiting for those questions, if any, I wanted to say something about budget. So I've made it the policy of the faculty that we present the budget every year, but we will be presenting it in the fall. We are continuing to spend cautiously. The deficit of the faculty continues to grow. I want to, I happened to meet with Dimitra Kafantaris today, and she made the point, and I want to underscore it, that we've had excellent collaboration from the Provost's office and Richard Martin in particular to try and find solutions. So we're working very closely to try and find workable solutions that allow us to deliver our academic mission, but remain fiscally responsible. I will be giving a budget update in fall. Of course, I thank you in advance for your frugality and your support. So, we're still trying to be as careful as possible and really focus our money where it needs to go, the most useful investments. And I think that is the end of my comments, right, Talia? So there's a question from Dan Bernard. Dan, do you want to say this out loud?
Well, it'd be easier if I hadn't just eaten a pretzel, but yeah, sure.
That's probably why I asked you, just to see.
I'm just wondering if you can envision any change to the current status quo with respect to lab work, because I think most lab people in the labs will have had at least one shot. Everyone is and will continue to wear PPE, knows how to wear PPE. Can you imagine us going down to 1 meter distancing? Because that could really help.
So I apologize because I was supposed to say that the university is assuming 1 meter distancing for the fall. So
but I'm talking about for the summer. Can you imagine this happening in the labs?
I can very well imagine it, but we will follow public health directives.
Okay.
And so far we don't have those. It may be that in 12 minutes, that's what the premier is going to announce. And that in that case, we'll follow what is being proposed by the province. We're not going to, there's a limit to how far we can go on our own. If you ask me my gut feeling is that we're going to be getting there sooner rather than later, because this province has embraced vaccination very enthusiastically. And so you're going to have a high rate of vaccination in the province, and I think that's going to give us more flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no other comments, so I think we can go to the next slide. And now I would like to turn this over to Amy Ryan, who is going to talk about a review of thesis-based graduate programs. Amy.
Thank you. And this is this font is a fun font that changes every time I show it on a different computer. So this will be a fun little short presentation. So I want to bring everybody's attention to the fact that over the last year and a half, 2 years, it started some time ago, that we've been reviewing thesis-based graduate programs in the faculty. And Lee, if you can go to the next slide. And so there's been a committee that it's at the bottom of the slide that I owe a huge debt gratitude towards, because they've really worked hard on this and supported this process. So Isabel Jelinas in rehab sciences, Corin Mann in oncology, Naguib Meshawar from psychiatry, Bernard Robert pharmacology and therapeutics, Tibor Schuster from family medicine, and El Schreier from physiology. So together as a committee, we have reviewed the documents from the programs that I'll share in just a minute. And how this was done is that we created a self-study questionnaire that really addressed most points, although we realized we left a few questions out about graduate supervision, graduate support, curricula, etc., in all of the different thesis-based graduate programs. We distributed this December last year through March, and then our responses came in from January through November, and then we met to review from November 2020 to February 2021. And so here are the programs that we reviewed. So 6 from the School of Biomedical Sciences, 6 from the School of Medicine, and then as well from the other schools we reviewed epidemiology, biostats, occupational health, nursing, communication science disorders, and rehab sciences. We did not review the Masters in Medical Physics, which is an accredited program and had just in the last couple of years passed through their accreditation process, or the PhD in Health Sciences Education, which has just been started sort of ad hoc in the last year. As well, we didn't review the 3 interfaculty programs in which our faculty members participated in. So biological biomedical engineering, integrated program in neuroscience, and quantitative life sciences. We didn't review those programs. So I want to share with you briefly our 5 major findings from the overview of these 16 programs. So first of all, I want to congratulate everybody that's involved with graduate supervision, because overall, I think we are doing a very good job of training our graduate students, providing them excellence in their research support, oversight. But there are still things, as always, that we can improve on. And so what we felt was that most programs are indeed delivering content that is meeting the needs of the graduate students, but overall, we're really providing little oversight or support for postdoctoral fellows. And this is particularly important because these are the people we're launching sort of into the next phase of academic career. And so we really, I think, owe them a little bit more in terms of, well, we're training them to be great researchers and publish their papers, et cetera. We all know that when we start as faculty members, there's a lot more many other things that you need to know than just that when you launch your lab. And so we're looking at providing a little bit more oversight and support for our postdoctoral fellows. We also saw that throughout the different graduate programs, there are really mixed initiatives with respect to graduate student wellness. And this was great, but a lot of those programs are really relying on the students to sort of develop and deliver content. Over the last year, particularly through the pandemic, we've had a very active health and wellness working group of students where each graduate program has a representative that sits on this committee. So, and they've been developing programs just to help support their students throughout, but we would really like to do a little bit more. The other thing is that as we move forward, graduate programs are faced with increasing demands to provide a greater breadth of training, particularly with respect to transferable skills. And I know many of you sort of have heard these statistics that only about 25% of our graduate students are actually going to stay in academic science. This is not necessarily a recent statistic. I think this has been around for a long time. But as we think about this, we need to really help the students develop the skills that are going to be transferable to other areas of science that they go out into the world to do, as well as other careers. And I think that part of this is really sort of doing some check-ins to remind them of the skills they're learning as they go along. So we're not really a failure on this. It's really that we could just be doing a bit better and helping them out. And I think that we have to acknowledge that they are taking different career paths. So in some ways, academics is the alternate career path for most of them. The other thing is that programs are facing challenges in supporting and enhancing supervisor training. So almost all programs indicated that they wanted to do better in both supporting and enhancing their supervisor training. That's not just to improve bad supervisors, or I don't want to call anybody a bad supervisor, but to improve supervisor skills, but also to help support supervisors in dealing with an increasingly diverse array of challenges that comes with supporting students. And then finally, that most programs are sort of really mixed from very little to maybe moderate graduate student and postdoctoral fellow tracking of our alumni as they leave. And so if we go to the next slide, so we've kind of broken this down into things that we need, that we're saying are priorities for the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. So as a faculty-wide initiatives, and then I'm going to talk in a minute about things at the program level. So one of the things is really holistic approaches to create and improve healthy training environments. And this is not just, more mental health support, although that is part of it. It's really all of the aspects that come in and influence how well a graduate student is doing, from receiving the appropriate stipend to knowing what is their route to go to follow if they need support in mental health or in some other aspect of their life. And keeping them aware of, funding and other opportunities that are out there. So really a completely holistic approach. The other thing is that we've considered to develop modules at the faculty level for scientific ethics and professionalism. We acknowledge that some programs are doing an amazing job of this and have either workshop type courses or one credit courses where students are getting this, but other programs don't have as much to offer students. And so we thought we could piggyback or learn from the programs that are doing this well, and then develop some centralized modules that people could tweak for their individual programs. As well, another aspect would be to really support the development of supervisors. And this is sort of honing our skills all the time. I think that just like every other aspect of our lives, we can always be a little bit better than we were yesterday. And to really find ways to support supervisors in that. so that it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm being sent for remediation or some type of problem, but that this should be part of our culture, that we all want to be improving at whatever job we're doing at any one time, and really changing the philosophy that being a supervisor is a right versus a privilege. So I think many people view that this is just their sort of right of becoming an academic and working at an academic institution. And it's really that balance between right versus privilege. The other thing, of course, I mentioned on the previous slide is that to really develop a better support network for postdoctoral fellows that might include teaching them the transferable skills that they'll need, you know, when they step into their next job, whether that's in academia or elsewhere, but also supporting their development. We have many postdocs that want teaching opportunities that we're sort of struggling to find opportunities for that. And I know I don't want to go into at this point, but that the discrepancy between our two sort of tiers or two classes of postdocs that we have in the faculty. And then finally, just career preparation training for graduate students and for postdoctoral fellows, that we really work on using the tools that McGill already has to offer, like the independent development plan, as well as, you know, all of the other resources through CAPS, through TLS that are present, and being maybe a little bit more tolerant that our students might step out of the lab occasionally to take one of these courses and just take advantage of what is already at McGill. At the level of the programs, there really needs to be some improvement. And I have the next slide, Leah, please. So just an overall graduate program governance. So some graduate programs have a lot of governance. Everything is really in place. All committees have terms of reference, et cetera, and others do not. So there just needs to be a little bit more structure in some programs, and they will be getting the feedback on this. As well, in reflecting on the different graduate programs, many indicated that they wanted to increase their course offerings, increase the way they support their students in terms of workshops or other things, as well as for them to think about it in terms of what are the competencies that they're expecting their students to acquire while obtaining a master's or a PhD in their program. And so we're going to be working with the programs on that. Almost all the programs indicated that they are looking at changing or maybe tweaking, maybe modifying their, and I'm putting this as an umbrella, comprehensive qualifying / candidacy exam. Everybody calls it a little bit different. And we're going to be working with GPS has let us know that they would really like these transfer exams when you transfer a student from a master's program to a PhD to be tied to this candidacy exam. So we're going to be looking at that with the different programs and how they might tweak the timelines. Tracking alumni, so we might like to help with that, but also to just encourage and support programs in doing that. Knowing where your alumni is has huge implications for having them available to maybe come back and support your students in their career preparation, which is the last point on here, your students and postdocs in that. Alumni also go off and become very successful entrepreneurs, business people, academics. And so, you know, in terms of when we're trying to raise money for new fellowships, we would like our alumni to have fond memories of their time that they've spent with us in their graduate program, and to maybe give back a little bit. So there's multiple reasons for tracking alumni, not just financial, but also to support in career preparation and mentoring. And then, as I said, doing career development. So our next steps from my office is that we are going to be communicating these findings individually with the programs and establishing schedules for implementing changes, as well as we will be giving programs specific feedback from the graduate student survey that we did last winter. This is also an opportunity for programs to discuss if they're thinking about restructuring, rebranding, renaming, resetting their focus. I think many of you are aware there is a cancer graduate program that is being developed. This is going to impact some of our other graduate programs, but I don't think we should feel that's in a negative way. This is going to give new opportunities for students for training, and students should be in the program that best is going to provide them the best support all around for where they want to go and their research area of interest. So I think that there's an opportunity, though, for other programs to think about, okay, what do they need to do? How can they sort of boost their training programs and in what they want to do, and to reflect again then on the competencies that they're expecting their programs to get. I'm also going to be setting meetings to meet with each student's groups in the different programs to hear from them as a whole, because I haven't yet done that sort of in the last year. And then the final thing is that overall, we're going to be hopefully working on a gradual change in sort of just the culture of graduate programs to make this really a positive experience. It is an extremely stressful time for students and postdocs as they're going through this training period. But I think that, you know, we can support them. We can have a culture of positive change. And I don't think that taking that holistic approach to improve the environment affects excellence at all or affects productivity. In fact, it probably raises the bar on both of those. So with that, I will close and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Amy. And thank you to your entire committee for the hard work that you put into doing this. And thank you to everyone who's involved in filling out the forms and submitting things. I think you said it well, that we have strong graduate programs, but we have the opportunity to make them stronger. Ed Rudheiser has a question. Do you want to say it out loud, Ed?
Hi, I'm not going to show my face because I'm a bit of a mess, but I wanted to ask about, you had some plans originally to try to standardize the stipends across the board for graduate students, which I thought was a really interesting idea. And I'm wondering what the progress is, what's the status of that?
Okay, so the status is that I've met with some programs. The plan is that all of our students, and this is sort of also supported by GPS at McGill, is that all of our students should be paid a stipend that also accounts for the different tuition levels that are paid by our different categories of students, who are out of province students at the master's level, but are international students. So we really want to focus on having stipends that are equitable in terms of providing living support for all of our students. Right now, I think our international students are a hefty part of many of their stipends goes towards paying tuition. So we would like to just work on fixing this. So we have proposed a harmonized stipend. I'm not sure if I've ever, I can't remember. It would have been a while ago that I shared it here. I have started meeting with programs, and I'm going to be sort of picking, now that this report is out, picking up I was going to say dog and pony show, whatever, to go on tour with it again, to talk to.
That's what we're supposed to say about your
the different programs. I know there are. Well, you know, when my fonts change like this, it gets, maybe I'll have puppies next time. I don't know, but it really is important. And I think some programs are already doing this so that their students are paid a stipend plus tuition, regardless of what that tuition is. And it's supported by the Graduate Excellence Funds to help do that. Other programs, there's much more discrepancy within programs of what students earn. And so we really want to take that on and move that forward. You know, I've been told that, well, maybe this will limit the number of international students. And I don't think so. I think the programs that are doing that already have plenty of international students. So I don't think I think it is a challenge, and it's something we need to reflect on, but I think it's really important that we don't expect, you know, one group of our students to be living on a smaller stipend than other groups.
Thank you, Amy. I think it's also one of the most important things we can do for equity and diversity as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. So Rob Kearney has a question. How can, Rob, you want to speak for yourself? Or not?
Sure.
Go
So
ahead.
the problem with these issues are there's a conflict of interest for a supervisor in terms of research and pedagogy. And it's not unusual for research supervisors to say, I don't want my student doing anything except working in the lab. And especially is the case with young people who are facing tenure, who really need these people to push it. And I'm wondering, have you thought about how you could actually resolve this issue? Because otherwise it becomes difficult to tell supervisors that they should have students working elsewhere than in the lab?
So I think this is a challenge, but I think we have to remember that our students are trainees. They are not research technicians. And yes, they contribute to our research mission and they make very valuable contributions. But I think we also have to realize we're at an academic institution, and a part of that role is training these individuals, right? So they need the tools that, you know, and we can't train them in everything, right? We're not going to give them everything. I think that's impossible. But I think there has to be that mindset that they're not technicians. They are not solely responsible for meeting, you know, the research goals of a grant, although they make huge contributions to that. And it's, so I totally get the challenge, and I get the challenge for people with smaller amounts of total funding that they can't employ, you know, have research staff to do all of the work. But I think it's really important to continuously recognize that difference between a graduate student and your research technician or research assistant.
I completely agree with you. It's my question really is how do we change the culture? Because that's not the culture right now.
That's right. How do we change the culture? I think that we're gonna have to all continuously stay on this message, right? We have to sort of stay on point. Like, and if you don't believe that that's your role in training these graduate students, then you don't take a graduate student. Let them go to, you know, let them be trained by somebody who believes that. And it's a challenge, and but it really has to be, that's part of sort of the holistic approach of changing the culture, of realizing why we're here, or part of why we're here, you know.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Dan Bernard. Dan, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, I made sure not to be eating pretzels
Good.
for fear you would call on me. Amy, thanks for the presentation. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying in terms of the candidacy exam or the qualifying exam. If I understood correctly, part of the discussion is trying to have some harmony across programs in terms of when the timing of the fast tracking. Is that correct?
Right. So there's two things. One is a little bit of harmonizing, and I know this is being discussed in the School of Biomedical Sciences, but there's also this desire to have the tide that you would fast track and you would complete your candidacy, qualifying exam, whatever you want to call it, at the same time. So some programs currently do this. Not many, I shouldn't say. Some programs also do the fast tracking at the end of year one, so after 2 or 3 semesters, and then they do a comprehensive sometime in PhD 2 or PhD 3. For the financial consequences of that are nothing to move it to a later date, are nothing for a Quebec student. That would cost you one more term of higher tuition for an out-of-province master's student. So that would be about, if you view it that way, a $2,500 cost for an out-of-province master's student, and probably, if I can do my math fast enough, a $7,000 cost for an international student. So over the course of the 5 or 6 years that a student will be in that lab, that's not a significant amount of money. So I don't think that it should be really a financial barrier. The idea is that students should be, if you've already said they have the potential to go straight without having to complete a master's into a PhD program, you would hope that you can also assess at that point that they can sort of defend their thesis, defend the subject area around their thesis, and move forward. So we would be looking at probably moving that to the 18 to 24 months. They would have to complete by 24 months in that case, if you're combining them.
So Amy, we're running out of time, but there's still a couple of questions. I'm going to go through them quickly. Shauna,
I can put answers in the chat too.
Okay, I think there's one question here from Carmen Loisel about the financial benefits for the university. I don't have them off the top of my head, but just to remind people how it works in Quebec, all tuition goes to Quebec City and it comes back in the form of grants. So there isn't like, if there isn't a direct relationship between how much tuition is paid and how much money we get necessarily, unless it's an unregulated program, in which case we're responsible for all costs associated with it. But here we're talking about thesis programs, which are all regulated, right, Amy? Do I get
Yes,
that right?
yes,
Somebody's getting
you're
this.
correct.
So I think maybe we can look up that information and share it offline. And Sean Robbins is asking about whether there's any chance for an increase in the amount of funding for graduate students. And I'm not aware of any effort to do that at this time.
I don't understand the question. Amount
Well,
of,
in other words, if they
funding-
have to pay, if tuition is going to be, stipend is going to be mandatory, could there be more funding for graduate students?
it should, we are also recommending an increase. Many programs haven't had an increase for some time. So there is also a slight increase being recommended along with that.
Okay, so I think those are, maybe you could take a look at those, Amy, and please
Yeah.
answer them offline in a little bit more detail. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance for everybody to speak, but we were running out of time. I want to give everybody a chance. Thank you very, very much again for your work, and thank you everyone for participating in this discussion. And there'll be a lot more over the next few months and years as it's not finished.
Yeah.
With that,
Thank
I'm going to we're going to move on to some issues related to the MDCM program. Un des problèmes avec le programme en médecine, c'est qu'on a besoin des étudiants qui sont très capables à parler le français. Et il y a quelques années, on a proposé une thèse d'admission qui a été rejetée par le conseil de la faculté à l'époque. Alors là, on a demandé au bureau d'admission de faire des études, vraiment d'étudier, de faire une enquête sur comment on peut aborder cette question de façon acceptable. Et aujourd'hui, Estelle Chetrit et Kate Houghton vont nous parler de leurs conclusions. So these things are not for, this is for information, not for decision. And I think Estelle, you're taking the speaking role here, right?
Yes.
Take it away.
Thank you. So as Dean Edelman mentioned, we have 2 updates for admissions that we wanted to bring forward for you guys today. So the first one is the language proficiency update. So if I can have the next slide. This is from the Faculty of Medicine Statement on Language Proficiency. And I think we can all kind of recognize that it's in order to provide essential services and safe care in Quebec, our students need to have a kind of working knowledge of French. And this is very early on in the clinical setting for our students. So next slide, please. So in terms of a bit of the background and the evolution to get to where we are today, in 2019, the MDCM program language policy was modified and required testing for French and English post-admission. This was implemented by our admissions office with a 2-step approach. So we had some intensive messaging that went out to our prospective candidates about the language expectations for both campuses. And we administered a mandatory placement test in the summer just prior to orientation. The goals of this were really to inform the students of their competency level and orient them to recommended courses, but enrollment in the courses was optional. And we were asked to come back after 2 years and report on some of the updates. That's okay, next slide. So based on what we know from the last 2 years of our admitted students is that 86.5% of new students met the minimum requirement. So that was a mid-intermediate level for language competency in both English and French. There was a subset of these students that were exempt from testing, either because they attended the school in the target language, so had some schooling, let's say in French, if that was the language you were going to test, or had done some interviews in that target language. What we do know is 13% of our new students, and these are primarily the university candidates admitted directly into the MDCM program, are not proficient in French to a minimum level. So when we analyzed this data a little further, what we realized was that French skills really remained a primary concern, and that was both in the Montreal and the Outaouais campus, and as I mentioned, primarily for university level students. English skills were not a concern for either campus. That Campus Outaouais requires a higher level of French, so higher than B2 for success in the program. And that students, when we analyzed the students who were admitted, those that completed both high school and CEGEP in Quebec, and that's whether they did it in English or French, met the current level of French that we were requiring at a B2, and actually the majority tested at the advanced C1 level. So next slide, please. So earlier this year, the MDCM program committee revised its policy to require French proficiency prior to admission as of fall 2023. Our admissions approach is very similar to what is already in place for nursing and PT and OT. What we've realized was that additional proficiency testing for English really wasn't required. And so we're going to revert back to the McGill-wide policy that we plan on announcing. So this coming summer 2021, for a fall 2023 kind of requirement. And we think that that'll really provide ample time for our candidates to take required courses and take the tests that are needed. And that we are going to continue with the minimum B2, so the mid-intermediate level of French requirement for the Montreal campus, but we are increasing it to a C1 or advanced level for Campus Outaouais because the language of instruction is French there. We are expanding the exemptions from testing. So currently, if a candidate had completed a year of secondary or post-secondary study at the institution whose official language was French, they would have been exempt from testing. We are expanding that to include our candidates who have completed high school and CEGEP in Quebec, whether that be in English or French. And this aligns partially with the Office québécois de la langue française requirements. As well, candidates who've written CASPER, which is one of our selection tools, that's an online situational judgment test. If they've written it in French, even though it's not a French language test, it does require strong communication skills, so they'll be exempt from testing. And some of our other faculties of medicine in Quebec do require it to be written in French. So in terms of what we will accept as proof, really all standardized tests that are commonly used in Quebec will be accepted. We are mindful of keeping medicine accessible and the added cost that this might be for some of our students. So we are working with the School of Continuing Studies to develop an online test that would be administered at the cost of $50 to our candidates prior to the application deadline, and an oral component that would be done kind of shortlisted a little bit prior to interview to increase the validity of the test. And as we'll go through in the next presentation, we do have kind of underrepresented groups and specific pathways and programs in place for candidates applying to medicine. So we'll assess those on a case-by-case basis. And finally, we're encouraging the MDCM program to continue to support and expand the opportunities for students to learn and practice medical French once admitted into the program. And this is just a list of some of the activities that are already present in the program. So with that, I think we will move to the next.
Well, no, before you move to the next part, sorry to interrupt Estelle. I just want to make sure there are no questions about this. The last time we presented this at Faculty Council was very controversial. This is the chance to make sure that it's not too controversial now. I'm not hearing or seeing any comments, so I think you've
Hi.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yes, maybe I missed it. I apologize if so, but I was wondering, how does this apply to les étudiants des Émirats Arabes Unis that come as in the program of residency? Would that apply?
So it does not. So I'll handle that one. It doesn't apply to residency. This is only for undergraduate medical education. We are looking at how we can do something. We are already offering those people who come from the Middle East opportunity to at least gain some basic French before they start. Obviously, they can't instantaneously learn to speak French fluently, but that is a separate problem that does need attention. But today we're talking about the medical program. I just remind people that nursing and PNOT in particular have already made French level, set the level of French that people have to have before they join their programs.
Okay, thank you.
D'autres points à soulever? If not, please go ahead, Estelle.
Thank you. So the next update is the development of a Black student admissions program for medicine. So in terms of context, I mean, we heard calls to actions from our community members and the public at large. As I mentioned, we do follow underrepresented groups and their admission into the program, and Black students are one of those. This is kind of addresses the anti-Black racism, the provost plan, and the faculty plan. We heard from some of our other colleagues at other Canadian medical schools that had success with similar initiatives. And this is really part and parcel of a larger plan. So with the creation of the SACE office, program support for Black applicants, and then the in-program supports for admitted students. So this is kind of the admissions piece of that continuum. So next slide, please. So this is the diversity statement from the faculty, and it just recognizes that there are populations that are excluded from equal opportunities in our society, and we're socially responsible to build fair and more equitable systems. And this is where we feel that the admissions office really comes in to help identify and remove some of those barriers to admissions. So in terms of the creation of this program, the development and stakeholder consultation was really led by our own medical student, Victoire Cadet, who's a Med 3 now, and who's the Quebec Regional Director of the Black Medical Students Association of Canada. We got key input from the SACE office and from Dr. Anita Brown-Johnson, who participates in our admissions best practices subcommittee and is also part of the Dr. Kenneth Melville McGill Black Faculty and Staff Caucus. In terms of approval, so it was approved by our admissions committee, the Committee for Medical Education and Governance, and got university level approval last week. So what we are proposing, next slide please, is an optional application stream where candidates who self-identify as Black and are Quebec residents who meet the excellence criteria will be invited to submit an essay that contextualizes their life experiences. And this will be assessed by Black health professional and community admissions filed reviewers. The excellence criteria, so as I kind of alluded to quickly in the previous slide, there are 3 selection tools that we use as a primary screen for admission. So the first one is the academic dossier, and that would be a GPA of 3.5 or higher, and an equivalent of our score of 34.5 or higher. These thresholds or levels were kind of chosen because this is what we're expecting from our MedP students in order to be promoted into MDCM. And this is kind of within the realm of who would be invited or who can be invited for interviews for medical admissions. The CASPER score is the situational judgment test that we use as well. And it's resulted as a Z score. And so we're looking for negative 1.5 standard deviations or higher, and a CV score that is comparable to that in that cohort of applicants. So candidates who have met these excellence criteria and who have been endorsed by the Black admissions file reviewers will be invited to MMI, and there the decision for admissions will be based solely on their performance within the MMI. There's no seat quota per se. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, perfect. So our goals are really to work with SACE to continue to encourage Black candidates to apply to McGill and to promote development of student supports once they're admitted into the program. We really believe that this aligns with our faculty mission and values by welcoming excellent candidates and improving representation in the profession. We are going to be opening the applications on September 1st of this year for our fall of 2022 start date. And we plan on reviewing the program impact and recommend any changes within the next 2 years. So with that, I thank you for your attention and open the floor to any comments or questions. Sorry, Dean Eidelman, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying not to talk during your presentation, and I managed to not talk during my own. So thank you very much, Estelle. Sorry about that. Graham says his mic doesn't work, so he has a question. Are there any other admission changes due to COVID Will the same criteria be used as last year? For example, will MMI be scored 100% post-interview?
So yes, MMI will be 100% of the admissions decision once they get to that selection stage. Previously, we had a kind of 20%, which was a basic science score. But when we actually, this was independent but simultaneous to COVID, we had removed that because we found that GPA was actually a higher predictor of success within the program itself rather than the basic science score.
Okay, thank you. Len Levine has a question. Len?
Oh, sorry, it's actually Francine Reed. I'm just on his.
Oh, okay. Well, Francine, not only do I, there's no way I can know that. It just says Len Levine. So
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead,
sorry.
Francine, ask your question.
Sorry about that. No, I was just interested in the what you were saying about the Black students, but listing the, or candidates, I should say, listing the criteria there. It looks like it's similar criteria or the same criteria that you would be using for non-Black Quebec students. Is there any difference in that 34.5 and the other things that you had listed there?
No, it's exactly the same criteria and it's the same selections tools that we're using. The only thing is that because we have so many applicants, sometimes our the GPA or the R-score of someone who would need to be invited to interview is kind of artificially inflated. And so we do see that we tend to trend towards that end of the spectrum. So this is just facilitating that, and it's kind of overcoming that first hurdle to come to interview. But these are all very acceptable and reasonable scores. It just depends from year to year about the cohort that might be applying.
I would remind people that for this particular program, this is emulating many aspects of a program that was already instituted at the University of Toronto very successfully without creating any quotas. And it's a way to just give people a chance to have access, as Estelle said, to the later parts of the selection process and compete with everyone else. I'm not seeing any other questions. If not, I want to thank you very much, Estelle, and thank you, Kate, for your hard work on this. And we're going to move on. And I think the next speaker is Dr. Tim Evans, and he has his own slides. So I'm going to turn the floor over to him and turn off my mic again. Tim?
So just unmuting. Well, can you see my screen?
Yeah, you're just not in, you're in some other mode. You need to be in presentation mode.
How's that? Oh, right, got you.
There you go.
Is that good?
Perfect. Take it away.
Great, thanks very much. So I'm just going to run you through briefly some of the planning around the School of Population and Global Health that's been taking place. It's had multiple inputs over the last year in this bizarre period of the COVID pandemic. And it builds very importantly on a strategic plan document that was approved by Senate in 2016, but it has been supplemented by a set of working groups looking at specific topics that might be important for the school, a number of town hall retreats, consultations throughout the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, as well as McGill, benefited from advisory input, both local and international, and of course the oversight from the faculty. It's not starting from scratch, and I think this is really important. There are 4 well-established groups that constitute the school, a department of epidemiology, biostats, and occupational health, an Institute for Health and Social Policy, the Biomedical Ethics Unit, and the Global Health Programs. There are over 50 tenure-track faculty and multiple staff, and we get great support from the AEC3. When you look at what we're starting with, tremendous depth in research and research methods related to a broad spectrum of health issues, top-notch education programs that are in high demand from students, and graduates seem to be scooped up quickly. for employment. We've got very good campus-wide connections and collaborations, and there's a very clear appetite for engagement beyond the ivory tower. We do have some gaps, and these have been identified. We're shy in some key disciplinary and science areas. For example, health economics, one of my passions, but there are a number of them that we've identified. There are some strains on the demands for teaching. This is the popularity of EPI and biostats and other programs, not only within the school, but more broadly. There are issues that we're working on with Amy with respect to how we manage graduate level student financing. There are issues on diversity that we think we can do better on. And very importantly, we think we can improve our linkages with the clinical schools and departments. There's the bigger context in which we find ourselves, to which we have no choice but to be responsive. Obviously, the pandemic, but not only the current pandemic, syndemics are the word of our time, and also the climate change crisis. And this spans a spectrum of issues, infectious chronic diseases, mental illness and well-being, under and over nutrition. And so we really need to think about topically how we manage to position ourselves in those areas. But there are three other areas that are particularly important. The systemic inequalities that we've all seen emerge in the context of the COVID pandemic, but emerge in virtually all issues related to health, along with other age and gender and within and between country inequalities. We have systems-wide performance shortfalls related to services and public health in terms of coverage, quality, affordability, speed, sustainability, expectations of trust. And we're in a vortex of health tech and digital futures change, where there's a unity, increasing unity between the big picture syndemics or pandemics and the microscopic metabolomics or proteomics. We're an age of data science and unprecedented computing power, which is raising all sorts of issues related to the ethics of use of data and policy. The brave new world of global health, we're living it and have been for the last year. As Richard Horton, Lancet editor, suggests, COVID's not just a pandemic, it's a syndemic. It's interfaced with chronic diseases and socioeconomic inequality being indicative of that. And we're now in a race for vaccine equity. And this just came out of The Economist, 10 million reasons to vaccinate the world if we only knew how. Nevertheless, we abide by this advice from a former British Prime Minister, never let a good crisis go to waste. And we found that epidemiology is now a bestseller. And I think the real question, is it in the nonfiction section or the fiction section? And I think this relates to the fact that so many people have gravitated to this as self-declared experts, and the need for quality and discipline perhaps has never been greater, but a tremendous opportunity for the school. Very importantly, we're aligned with the university strategic umbrella, and I'm sure you all have taken the academic strategic plan to heart that McGill passed for a few years ago, but very important words that relate to the school there. McGill is an open, connected university with a clear sense of purpose. And I think these things really relate to the global nature of university education in this era. And of course, the changes closer to home and the renaming of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, and us being one of 6 schools in this new structure. We've updated a vision, mission, and values, and so we see ourselves primarily as advancing knowledge for improved health equity, and well-being, and our mission being training leaders and partnering to generate and translate knowledge that improves health equity, and well-being. We've got a broad set of values that span the spectrum from ethics, from excellence, integrity, and move into collaboration and partnership, and end with accountability and learning to do better. We've identified strategic objectives related to the core functions of the university, but tailored to the needs of the school. So research that's high impact, interdisciplinary, fueled by high quality methods, novel data infrastructure, and best practices in knowledge translation. On education, we're looking to provide students from diverse backgrounds and career stages outstanding learning opportunities for leadership in research, practice, and policy settings. And our service objective is to engage with diverse community and practice-based institutions across local to global jurisdictions to support their missions through research and education and to nurture applied learning. Diversity is a cross-cut priority, and it matters. We had a working group, an anti-racism working group, informing the strategy with a set of recommendations. We've been working very closely with the SACE and Salim Razak. And this is an upcoming meeting that we're co-hosting with Université de Montréal and their new dean, Carla-Adi Dubois. And it's asking the provocative question, anti-racism and the public's health, are universities stepping up? And so I think these are the sorts of things where that agenda has to come to life, but in partnership with some of our institutions that find themselves asking the same questions. A big part of the strategy relates to cross-cutting priorities. And this is inspired by a Canadian who found his way into Johns Hopkins, Carr White, who wrote a provocative book in the 1970s about the importance of maintaining a union between clinical world and population health world. And he made a prescription called Healing the Schism. So in that spirit of unity, we have identified a set of priorities in the bubbles here related to a trials innovation platform, looking at new models of care with the Department of Family Medicine, looking at digital health innovation, and really trying to align our educational initiatives with others in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. A few words on the education front. We think it's really important to understand demand for education and what the expectations are of the next generation of learners. And when you look and chat with these folks, you find that they're borderless, they're local and global citizens, they're boundaryless, they have an appetite for learning across disciplines, and they have real interest in real world experiential learning, in addition to class-based or text, more traditional didactic learning. In that spirit, we're developing an undergraduate interfaculty program in population and global health. And this has a number of defining features. First, it will have competency-based foundation courses, a requirement for community engaged in experiential learning. It draws on a set of blended learning approaches. It has an admissions policy, following up on Estelle's presentation, perhaps serendipitously, aimed towards equitable and diverse cohorts, and a mentoring program that supports that diversity. Further, looking within the faculty, we're looking at strengthening our collaboration with existing programs, the departments of the faculty, but also the hospitals, the MSc in experimental medicine, the MSc and PhD in family medicine and primary care. And we're paying attention to the need to iron out some of the issues that need to be ironed out with respect to teaching and supervision of students, which sometimes are bottlenecks in limiting collaboration as it might take place. We're looking at co-developing new programs, an MSc in experimental medicine and surgery, which has concentration in digital health, a clinical epidemiology option, and a one-year MSc PH option, public health option for clinicians. We're also interested in new modes of program delivery. And Mark Roger has been pushing us on this front to think about modular programming. We have now stackable certificates in biostatistics, which allow people to move through progressively. And we've also got a really interesting dual degree public health data science program with McGill and Bordeaux. Structurally, we've moved to have all of this work move through 3 inaugural departments. And this is a departure from the vision in 2016, which anticipated 6 divisions. And through the consultations, I think people felt that we would be better off with 3 departments and 6 divisions, in part because there was a need to keep some disciplines like epi and biostats together. There was a feeling that that departments were better suited for growth, better structured to maintain degree granting education programs, and also to recruit high-profile chairs and faculty, as well as promoting meaningful linkages with other departments within the faculty and the university. These 3 departments are aligned by 3 strategic programs in research, education, and service. And across all of it, we have a set of labs and centers and platforms that are issue-based, cross-cutting, high-profile, and hopefully resource mobilizing. A lab on pandemic emergencies, a trials innovation platform, and a center for global mental health. So let me just finish then on the pandemic and emergency readiness lab. We were thrust into this crisis, and it's been incredible to see the response. This is conceptually how we're looking at this lab. Every crisis requires 3 critical ingredients. One is to stand ready, that's preparedness. Secondly is to surge smart in the crisis. And then finally, when the crisis is over, is to build back better. In this crisis, we've had outstanding modeling work from Doctors Mathieu Maillot-Giroux and David Buckridge, working hand in glove with Ines and the Ministère de Santé, de Services Sociaux et de Santé of the Province du Québec. Really fantastic partnership, projecting needs for beds, both regular and ICU. We also launched the Community COVID-19 Immunity Task Force, which we're hosting here at McGill, which is co-chaired by Professor Catherine Hankins. We're focusing increasingly at the issue of vaccine equity, not only within Canada, but we'll look at this globally, because none of us are safe until all of us are safe. And we think there's a great opportunity to look at how we can make sure that the conditions for moving back to school and work safely are things that we can be on the front edge of. This is a HEPA filter, so it relates to the need to look at air quality, but also what the testing and provisions are for organizing the work environment so it's safe for all. Finally, we've just, in a very exciting way, recruited a new leader who has spent her life on the front lines of crises, Dr. Joanne Liu, who will be helping us in leading this lab. So with that, David, thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Well, thank you for that very exciting and very thoughtful presentation, Tim. I see, I'm going to leave a few seconds for people to ask questions. Togas Chalandi has asked a question about the possibility of somebody in his apartment who's trained in public health participating. And I think that raises a more general question. You did mention several projects with surgery and medicine, but maybe you could speak a little bit, given how critical some of the techniques and approaches that you guys have in the School of Population Global Health are to healthcare and health science generally. What about people who are in other departments, like in OBGYN or elsewhere?
Great. Well, thanks for that question. And I think there are a couple of things that I'd like to emphasize on this front. First, in our consultations with folks in the clinical departments, there are real issues about how to manage very strong expectations from people who are in their clinical formation, particularly at the residency or post-residency level, who are interested in some of the public health competencies, but balk a little bit at taking 2 years out or another 2 years out of their working life to go full-time into school. So I think this is part of the driver for thinking about a 1-year option for a master's in public health. We're concerned that we're losing out to Harvard, for example, and others that have a one-year MSc, one-year master's in public health. A lot of people go down and do that and pay an outrageous amount of money. We think they could get as good or better education here and not pay nearly as much. So, but one is to see how we can manage the supply to be more sensitive to the needs of students. Second, the Trials Innovation Platform is something that we've been looking at, which I think is something that could be very interesting for all of the departments. It's an area where there's huge transformation going on in this space at the moment. Most visibly, for example, it took us 1 year to get half a dozen vaccines into and through phase 3 trials with a huge degree of success. Normally that's a 10-year or more process. So are there ways we can shrink that? Can we be more innovative in the design? Can we manage the ethics and policy issues related to that so that McGill can become a leader in that, and the trials innovation could perhaps be an opportunity not for a department or a school, but for the faculty as a whole. The last thing I'd say is we're looking very closely at delivery, and we've had a great partnership with the Department of Family Medicine this semester, looking at how to bridge that gap, or that create more unity between what's good for public health and what's good for an individual's health. And so looking at innovative models of frontline delivery, catering to populations of disproportionate need. And I think the area of delivery in and of itself has massive transformative opportunity for virtually all of the clinical departments. So David, those are a few areas that we're looking at.
Thank you. And I would encourage department heads or anyone else interested who have some ideas of how they want to collaborate to contact Tim directly. Now, there's a couple other points. Maybe I'm going to ask these people to ask their questions directly because they're complex questions. Paul Heroux, you want to speak?
Yes, sure. I have this written question. It seems that occupational environmental health has been de-emphasized in the new plan. So why is that? Since hygiene is the prevention aspect of medicine, it's not an ivory tower, and it's of importance in COVID management.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul, for that question. And I think it's not a de-emphasis per se. I think it's really an opportunity to redefine what the school and the university is doing in this area. I don't know if you noticed in my final slide, I talked about back to work. And I think there's a huge opportunity there in the context of COVID to rethink and to reposition how the school will contribute in the context of the crisis. So as you know, we've identified this as an area. Secondly, we think that there's a fit with one of the new departments that we've created, which is a department really focusing on practice. Those discussions, as you know, are underway. So look forward to looking at how we can revitalize and position occupational health in the context of the plan.
Thank you. Paul, any more? Do you have any other points you wanted to make?
Essentially, what we're pointing out is that if you look at other universities in Canada, the structure of their public health arrangements, hygiene and occupational health have a much more prominent position than they are given at McGill, at University of BC, at University of Montreal, at University of Toronto. They are much more prominent than they are in the new plan. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. Erica Moody has some comments, but she's told me she can't unmute for some reason, some technical reason. So I'm going to read her question. Will feedback regarding overlap in assessments by the Office of Mediation and Reporting be taken into account in finalizing this document? If not, will that be communicated and explained to those who provided feedback? So I'm sorry, Erica can't speak for herself because I'm sure I massacred that question. But Tim, any answers to that?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure I understand the question fully. I'm not sure what overlap in assessments there are by the OMR. Erica, perhaps you can help me on that. I'm not sure I'm aware of what those assessments are. There has been a process in developing the strategy in which all the comments that have been received from folks have been duly recorded, and the responses that the leadership team has made in reflecting and making changes to the strategic document have been communicated. But I'm not sure if that's what your question is about.
I think that this may have to do with investigations. I'm going to suggest, Erica, that I'm going to suggest if you can't, because I can't do a good job of presenting what you're saying, that maybe you take this offline. I'm just worried that that I'm mispresenting things.
Oh, sorry, I've managed to get somewhere quieter.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Thank you. It's actually, you've done a great job. It's really an issue I've raised a couple of times about, you know, the proposal to put in place processes to investigate harassment and discrimination. I'm very concerned about reproducing excellent things done by OMR. And I've raised it a couple of times. I understand that committee is perhaps disbanded, but I'm worried that this is something that's going to end up in an appendix and approved, and it's important, and I think it's too important to just let slip by. So I was just wondering, you know, with the feedback that's received, you know, if it doesn't get into the final draft that gets approved, will we know why?
Yeah, so thanks, Erica. I know what you're referring to, which are recommendations emerging from the working group on anti-racism. And some concerns raised that some of the recommendations might replicate some of or overlap with some of the institution-wide structures that are set up to deal with those issues. And so I think what we've said is that that's a report of the working group. The leadership team of the group of the school will look at those and identify what it thinks are recommendations to be adopted by the school. And so that is for information. It's not in any way policy, just because these were recommendations coming out of that working group. But in the final document for the school, we'll make it abundantly clear that those were recommendations from the working group, and they're not binding on the strategy moving forward.
Now I'm on mute. Okay, Erica says thank you, and I'm thanking her for having spoken up because I'm glad you guys communicated. I was still a little confused there, but now I'm starting to make sense. Okay, if there are no other questions for Tim, I want to congratulate and thank Tim and of course his entire team for putting together the steering committee. Wanted to know if you had done anything since you were hired, and apparently you have. That's the conclusion that I have from this presentation. You've been very, very busy, and it's really nice to see the school coming together in such a structured and organized way. And I'm sure there's going to be lots more exciting stuff coming. So thank you very much. And with that, that will allow us to go to the next slide, which brings us to the fascinating parts of the agenda that, my favorite parts, the report of the steering committee, the nominating committee, and so on. So we're now going to go on to the business part of the agenda, which won't take very long, but it is very important. So next slide, please. Alors, le rapport du comité directeur lors de sa réunion de 31 mars 2021, le comité directeur a d'abord accueilli Kathleen Feierhaller en tant que représentante des étudiantes au cycle supérieur et passé en revue et adopté l'ordre de jour de la présente réunion du conseil de la faculté ainsi qu'une version révisée du cadre de référence pour ratification. Alors là, il y a aussi le rapport du comité des candidatures qui, lors de sa réunion de 15 avril 2021, le comité a proposé des candidatures. Le comité a passé en revue la composition du comité de lui-même, déterminé qu'à la suite de l'ouverture de Campus Outaouais, le cadre de référence du comité de candidature devrait être mis à jour pour inclure un membre représentant de nouveaux campus. Et voici quelque chose pour valider par le conseil de la faculté. Le comité de candidature recommande de mettre à jour son cadre de référence pour inclure au moins un membre de corps professoral représentant le campus Outaouais. Alors, Léa, si j'ai bien compris, on doit mettre ça, c'est sujet à un vote. Okay, so we don't have, I don't think, do we have the fancy voting gizmo?
We do not have the voting. We were doing this the other way to say if anyone objects, they should.
No, I'm coming to that. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't blow the chance to use the fancy voting gizmo. Alors, s'il y a des questions ou des points à soulever, s'il n'y a personne, je vais attendre pour voir s'il y a des personnes qui ont des objections à faire à cette proposition. Sinon, peut-être on peut avoir quelqu'un pour le proposer, peut-être Gilles Brousseau pour le proposer. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui peut le seconder?
Je propose.
OK. Il y a quelqu'un qui a secondé? Oui, OK. Et s'il n'y a pas d'objection, on va le déclarer comme accepté par le conseil de la faculté. Merci beaucoup. Et on passe à la prochaine diapo. Next slide. Il y a aussi les résolutions en bloc. Alors ça, c'est le procès-verbal de la réunion de février 2021. Et là, le lien a été envoyé aux membres de conseil avant cette réunion. Et ça va être disponible pour tout le monde dans la faculté à la suite de la réunion présente. Il y a quand même des postes à pourvoir au sein du conseil. Alors, pour le conseil de la faculté, on a besoin de 2 représentants, une représentante pour les étudiants au cycle supérieur de l'école de médecine et une représentante des étudiants au cycle supérieur de l'école des sciences biomédicales. Donc, on cherche des personnes qui seraient intéressées à le faire. Si j'ai bien compris, Léa, ces postes-là sont choisis par les étudiants eux-mêmes. Alors, c'est les associations des étudiants qui vont proposer les candidats. OK? Alors, merci. Suivant. And this brings me to, we're getting to the end. I do think it is important to highlight some of the amazing successes in our faculty since the last meeting, and here are a few of them. So first of all, Morag Park was named the Chevalière de l'Ordre National du Québec. Leanne Feldman has been elected president of the Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons, which is Nada Jabato received the Robert L. Noble Prize of the Canadian Cancer Society, and Claudia Kleinman received the Bernard and Francine Dorval Prize of the Canadian Cancer Society. Julia Vandemaren Bernier received the Emerging Scholar Award from that society, and Bartha Knoppers was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Canadian Bioethics Society. Don Shepard and Matthew Otten were both recipients of prizes through the Principal's Prize for Engagement Through Media. And I think anybody who's read the papers or watched TV or whatever lately has no question of why they won. Next slide. Professor Ernesto Schifrin, the physician-in-chief at the Jewish, was awarded the ISH Franz Volhard Award and lectureship for outstanding research. Don Shepard again was awarded the Legue Or MI4 Leadership Award. Samara Zavolkov received the Prix Marthe Bellan de FMSQ. Tanya Janodis Ferreira got the CRHP Distinction Award. Next slide. The Governor's General Innovation Award went to Sheila Wang. The 2021 Principal's Prize for Engagement through Media went to the Quebec Network of Junior Pain Investigators. And the 2021 Tiny Earth at McGill Undergraduate Summer Studentship Award went to the students you see there, Evelyn Cote, Alex Resendez, Bridget O'Brien, and James Sy. The Relève Étoile Jacques Genet Award went to for March went to Charles Couturier, and the Relève Étoile Jacques Genet Award for February went to Marie-Hélène Doucet. The Dorothy Nichols Scholarship went to Jessica Salonen and Adrienne Tremblay. And with that, that brings us to the end of that very long, prestigious award list and to our formal open discussion in Town Hall. This is where I get to say, does anyone have anything they want to bring up in the open discussion? If not, I would ask for somebody, don't forget to give us your input. I asked Terry Hebert to propose that we end the meeting. I see 2 thumbs up from Terry. And with that, I want to thank you all for being here and wish you all a great evening. Stay safe, everyone. Hang in there. Take care. Bye.